Yes, indeed. It is another great morning on the Morning Machine, the machine that makes your mornings move. Thank you so much for making the machine a part of your daily morning routine. And part of that morning routine means you need to get your finances in order. You need to talk money. It's a wealth of knowledge. It's a wealthy Wednesday. Yes, that's right. I'm going to put it. It's a wealthy Wednesday today. And today, we have a phenomenal guest who is going to end up being family. I will tell you that now because this is not going to be the last time you hear him. After today, he'll be back more and more and more, again and again and again. And I am so eager to just have him on. Honored, privileged to have him. Let's talk about the one and the only Marcus Knuckles, and you don't even need a Sonic. You don't need that because he is the one and the only Biz Money Pro. Let's talk about him for a second because he is a seasoned business finance specialist with over 15 years and counting of finance and credit experience. From South Jersey, Camden, New Jerusalem, native and alumni of Woodrow Wilson High School, the Woodrow Wilson High School. You got to put the in front of the alma mater. You know how that goes, right? Now, he furthered his education by also attending Langston University and Rowan University in South Jersey. Also, Rutgers Camden. I mean, a lot of you, especially in the Philadelphia area, South Jersey, the tri-state area, know what these schools and where these schools are. He also holds a FICO Pro certification, and is a member of the National Alliance of Commercial Loan Brokers. I could go on. I would be all day reading everything that he has accomplished, but the accomplishments are different. The impact is even greater. You're going to hear that word a lot today throughout this Wealthy Wednesday. So let's get the world ready to meet and greet the one and the only Marcus Knuckles, a.k.a. also known as the one, the only Biz Money Pro. Welcome to the Morning Machine, my guy.
Brother Rob, I can't even tell you like how excited you got me right now with that unbelievable introduction. Like, outstanding, Brother Rob.
Hey,
outstanding.
Listen, I always do this. when I do this, when it's time to do this, I do this, okay? You know what I mean? And the thing is that you have so much accomplishments and you've made so much of an impact over the years, but you know what I got to do? For everybody that listens in, you know what time it is. It's time to take it back to the old school. Let's take it to Union Square. Let's take it back to the beginning when you were coming up, before the Woodrow Wilson High School. You know, you had to go through elementary and middle school before you get to high school. So, in the beginning, what was the spark for you when it came to money and finances?
Wow, that's a great question. So I will say one of the very first things that kind of happened to me to kind of like get me to understand, or taking a interest in money a little bit more further was actually like probably my fourth to fifth grade. That transition. I actually was picked to be in a special program. You know how to think about growing up in the hood, there's always some type of special program going on.
Right.
But fortunately, this was a special program for the academically talented. So there was a program in Camden called the CHIPS program. And this was like,
I remember
kids.
that. I heard about that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It was a big program. And this was, kind of like, picking, the children that, express, really good academic accolades or whatever have you. And so I was chosen to, take that and participate in that program. So I had to go to a school that was cross town. So where at the time I was living in East Camden, I had to go to a school called Forest Hill, which was actually in Parkside. So, just that whole thing. And that was like and it was wild because the distance of the school was far, but not far enough for them to give me bus tickets. So I had to
No, yeah.
I had to use my own money to catch the bus.
Jersey Transit,
You know?
let me tell you something. Yeah. If any of y'all know about Jersey Transit, it can be
goodness.
a fool sometimes, man. You know what I mean?
And you'd be surprised, like certain routes, like there was not like a real easy route or multiple routes to get from East Camden to Parkside. It was like one bus. I remember it was called the 452. So, so literally, in regards to quote unquote like a personal finance or whatever, this was like a thing to where like, allowance and things of that nature kind of like really came into play, and
Right.
luckily, my dad was a mailman. And my mom actually was a teacher. So it was like education was definitely, in my family. And luckily, they gave me the little allowance or whatever have you, this and that. And it was like, I'm thinking that they're going to give me extra money to catch the bus or whatever have you. And it was like, no. So like having to make the financial decisions on catching a bus, having a little extra money to go to the store afterwards to get a little slice of pizza and a soda or something like that.
Takes management.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
It was like real financial budgeting decisions. And that was like, okay, like this is not just freestyle, just get money in your pocket. Like you really have to think money through. And, and I would say that was my first time of like really thinking about money.
And that's also where the most toughest decisions in finance usually start, is right there when you have to manage whether you want to get a soda or a snack at the store and have that extra money left over, or hey, maybe I can figure out a way to make this happen to where I have bus fare and maybe I could get a soda out of it if I go to the right store.
Absolutely.
It's those kind of decisions that you grow up having to make, and then you dive into the understanding and the nitty gritty, as we call it, of finance as you grow through high school and college and so on and so forth.
Prioritizing, man. That's what it was
Yes.
about. But I will say, the funny thing to kind of keep things in perspective, like, and then after that, ironically, I actually started running track, of all things, and running track for my city's track club, Camden City Track Club. And so from there, I would say from like graduating elementary through middle through high school, I always was thinking that, from running track and, being cool with the football players and the basketball players and all the other athletes, and I was a big Eagles fan. So my dream job was to be, like a personal, like a fitness trainer for the Eagles. That was like my dream job.
Right.
But then, how life goes or whatever have you.
Yeah.
And like even when I go into college, I majored in exercise physiology. Like it wasn't like I majored in finance.
Gotcha.
But, post college and, looking for jobs and things of that nature, I was lucky enough to have a buddy at my church that kind of was like, hey man, you should get into the mortgage industry, and that was like my first, finance job. And he had a really good situation, but he said, listen, you need to be experienced for me to hire you. So go to one of these other smaller shops, because at the time, this is like, late 90s, early 2000s, like mortgage companies were popping, they were hiring everybody.
Right.
That was the thing. So I found a small company to work for. I was working there for a while, doing very well. Winning accolades, kind of worked my way up from being a processor to an actual loan officer. And then I kind of had a moral, confrontation where I was learning, like we were pushing a lot of subprime mortgages.
Gotcha.
And in my opinion, I believe that, yes, there was a place for subprime mortgages, but I also believe that there should have been more education around it in regards of, hey, if the subprime mortgage is the only way for you to get the home, you get the home, but then transition into a more sustainable, conforming, or FHA product down the road. And for the most part, it was just more like sell, because, the subprime mortgage companies, they actually paid us very well for soliciting their services. So we got paid, twice almost. Like we got paid from the client, and then we also got paid from the lending institutions. But all that to say, I never forget this. This was, a story of me actually getting fired from this job. I wrote my pastor an email from the job. I had, I'm young in corporate America. I didn't really know. And I told my pastor how, like, I was kind of conflicted after one of my mentors was telling me, like, hey, you guys are selling all this subprime. And, like, why don't you sell your clients FHA or this product? And there was other products that were better and that were cheaper, but because of what we had access to, it was just like sell.
Right.
And this is a good point, because I'm going to segue back to this in regards of why consulting and kind of like advisory services are so needed, right? Or an intermediary, if you will. So long story short, they seen that email and they called me to the office 5 minutes after the email, basically saying, "Hey, Marcus, we don't want to conflict your moral beliefs. Here's the door, here's your check, and we got some other checks coming for you. No problem." And I was like in shock, like
That
life
it
shock,
happened so quickly.
that it happened so quickly, and like I was the number 2 producer in the company and growing, like
You
So-
pretty much were the moneymaker of the company, and they had no problem. They had all comfortability to just let you go within 5 minutes of an email being sent. Like, that was an immediate decision for someone that it wasn't a thought process
No
about
thought
it.
process.
It was just like, oh, well, if he wants to go, we're going to let him go. And it was just like, huh? Wait a minute. I thought y'all would have had to at least have a meeting about it or something. That's our mindset, especially if we're the moneymaker of the company. If no matter whether you're 1 through 5 or you're number 15 in the entire company, that is huge for somebody to make a decision. But it also shows how expendable we are
Absolutely.
in these particular positions as well. It exposes us to that harsh reality.
Absolutely. They didn't have any problem. They didn't even try to change my mind. It was the fact like, hey, this is what you're thinking, and your thinking is not on our thought process, so therefore it's time to go. And now, of course, now that as me being an employer,
Yeah.
I kind of get that. I understand it now. But of
Right,
course, back then I was hurt. But long story short, it definitely kind of pushed me to bigger and greater things. So what I did was I still stayed in the mortgage industry, but I worked for actually a small black-owned mortgage company.
Nice.
Actually, that was in my hometown of Camden. And fortunately, like my boss was kind of like, you know how they say, like, how some black businesses are kind of like the N-word businesses. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And he was kind of like that. I can't lie. But
Yeah,
what that did
right.
for me, it allowed me to like push for my own education. So we would have, wholesale lenders, like these other representatives from these big mortgage banks would come in and they would try to solicit us, their products. They wanted us to always sell their bank. I took advantage of every training, this and like I even went to the companies and met the owners of these banks and things of that nature. And because of that, I got access to more information, and that really kind of changed the game for me, because I never forget, like, my eye-opening experience about lending
Right.
and finance was a document called the Truth in Lending Statement.
Yeah, I saw
The
that.
Truth in Lending Statement, if you buy a home, and even in some credit card cases, you'll see like there's a chart, or it's called an amortization chart, that will basically spell out, if you make this mortgage payment from today to 30 years from now on the first of the month, making this exact dollar amount payment, this is what you're going to really pay. Like, in regards to, like, even though the house is, let's say, $300,000, with compound interest calculated over 30 years,
Yeah.
you might really be paying $460,000. But it shows you this, and it shows you, like, how your mortgage statement, let's say if your mortgage payment is $2,000, and you see how out of that $2,000, especially when your first payment, it might only be maybe $100 of that is actually going to your principal balance. The rest is going towards interest, taxes, and insurance. So when I seen that, and then I also thought about how many people got paid in one transaction. You had the mortgage company, of course, getting paid, and the mortgage company paid multiple people: the loan officer, the processor, then the title company got paid, the title agent, the title agent's processor. Then you had an appraiser; he got paid. Like, you had the city and the county for different record keeping, and different, a lawyer might have got paid in the transaction.
Wow.
Like, and I'm thinking to myself, like, wow. And then in addition to that, I'm also thinking, like, one house might have multiple transactions, meaning like it's the purchase, then a refi, then a home equity line of credit, then it gets sold again maybe, then another. And I'm like,
Times how many homes
Exactly.
sold, which means it could be folks could get paid like $5
Oh my
per
God.
person. Times how many houses though? How many houses under the company's belt that they've processed these home loans for, mortgages for? How many houses did you do that for in a month's time? So times that $5, making buku, as we we use that word up north a lot.
Yes,
Buku money.
Cream, Wu-Tang.
Dollar bill, y'all.
Wu-Tang Financial all the way. Like, it was like, I
like how you put that too. Yeah.
no, but when I seen it, I was like, and it dawned on me. I said, it's money and money.
Exactly.
Like, and it will always be money and money. So
it's almost like residual income in a sense, because each time a house is sold and a mortgage is drawn up, right, for however many years, guess what? Somebody getting paid, whoever holds that position, is getting paid for those X amount of months or years that they are continuing to hold that position per home.
absolutely.
And that is why a lot of people think the money is in such and such of business, right? No, the money is actually right there. And it's the
right
most
there.
simplest way to get crazy paid. Wow. And I did not notice. I had not, until today, you bringing this to the table, I had not heard about the truth in lending statement before, because I haven't been on a house journey yet, respectfully. I intend to go on one, but now knowing this information
Oh, absolutely.
behind, it gives me a more in-depth, behind-the-scenes, impactful look at what home buying really is, and what, if you're on a mortgage, what you will be really paying over that time. The interest is where things are getting really, really tight. It gets really tight. So really, if you got a $350,000 home, you might be paying, by the time that 30 years is up, you might be in the 400s, as you just alluded to.
Absolutely.
Depending on what the cost is. It could be 400, or maybe even up to, probably the max, maybe 525, depending on what those interest rates are. And that's why it's so important for us to look at the interest rates when it comes to home buying, because they are vastly important. A lot of us in our community overlook those interest rates. And number one reason is because we have a lack of understanding. Would you agree?
Huge. Lack of understanding is huge. And even, and I'll give you a perfect scenario. Like, I remember, when I was working as a loan officer, and people, and I'm talking to people, and they're like, yeah, how much house can I afford? And they're trying to do the whole affordability thing, right?
Exactly.
Or what can I get approved for? Mm-hmm. And my question was, first, is what payment do you feel comfortable with? Because the approval amount and the payment that you feel comfortable with can be two totally different amounts.
Facts.
And I'll give you a perfect example.
Yes.
So typically for like FHA and conforming loans or whatever, which are like, the better products, when they do, like, you hear people talk about debt to income ratio. And that's just basically where they're looking at the money that you make from a gross perspective. So that's a quasi good thing. Yeah. But let's think about this. Gross means before taxes. So
correct.
Let's say you're making $100,000, right? And then that breakdown on a monthly basis comes out to about what? Like, I think it's like $8,033 or something like that per month.
Right.
Now, typically the formula is like you can't go over 44%. Of that number. So basically, they want you to have, what's that, 56% availability. Now, mind you, let's just say even half, right? So that's like $4,000 a month. That they don't want all your bills to go past $4,000 a month, meaning like anything that's on your credit report. So your credit card payments, your car payment, this and that. Now, mind you, the typical house right now is, goodness gracious, I would say national might be what, 250, 300. That's like a regular standard, and And if you're in a halfway decent metropolitan area or whatever have you, that's about what you're going to pay. And the mortgage payment for that is like roughly just on average, depending on what the taxes are, will be like around like $2,000. So now you got to think about it. Like, all right, even though I make $100,000 a year, I work at a W-2 job. I'm paying taxes on that, so I don't bring home that full $8,333. I'm also maybe paying into like some type of pension or 401k,
Right.
My health insurance. Like
Yeah,
I might
all
only
your normal deductions that are taken off of paychecks weekly, bi-weekly, monthly,
Right.
however you get paid, right?
so out of that $8,000 a month, well $8,300 a month, I might only really bring home maybe $4,500.
Yeah, tax bracket. Yeah.
So then I still got to make that mortgage payment, which is just about half of that. Plus, and mind you, I haven't even lived yet. I haven't even paid a light bill. I haven't, you know what I mean? Like, God forbid if you go outside. Like, we already know how outside costs. Like, here in Atlanta, I think the outside cost in Atlanta got to be at least like $200-$300. Just coming outside your house, you're gonna spend about $200-$300.
That's facts.
Like,
especially if you live around this area. And when I say that, because you have so many things around you. You have Atlanta, for instance, World Congress Center. You got so many different things around you that you're going to be tempted to spend the minimum $100, $200. Some of you might spend that just on food.
and then our people, we're not even gonna count if you got some type of like clothing addiction or something like that. Like you in these stores and this and that or whatever have you.
Oh, call
like,
us out, call us
that's
out,
that's
man.
that's that that Instagram thing. Like everybody watching what everybody else like
Man.
like it's.
Let me ask you this. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. What is the deal with social media basically bringing out this false narrative and these false ways of living and thinking people are living financially stable, and they're really not. They really have no knowledge of financial freedom or intellect. That's what I was looking for.
Brother
Financial
Rob,
intellect.
I would say this can probably take us on a totally different tangent, but the one thing that I can say that I've learned this personally, and I think that this is a lesson that should be taught more even at home, and in as many other places as possible, is the importance of running your own race. Like everybody's life, race, situation is so different. Yes, we got similarities, but at the same time, everything is different. And for me, like especially in my business, I get to see the real deal. Like you can't really fake the funk on me because I'm asking for financial documentation.
Absolutely.
And yes, there are ways to get money for your business without without documents or whatever have you. But when you're really when you have a business that's in a position to scale, meaning like you're hiring people, you're growing or whatever have you, that's when the institutions need to actually see some paperwork.
Right.
So that's the game changer. So for me, like I've seen it where somebody who you might least expect from a social media perspective, like looking at their social media page, and then I look at their tax returns or their financial statements, and I'm like, wow, they really making some money.
Yeah.
And then I see somebody else who's on social media who got all the pictures, the private jets, and the the vehicles and the cars or whatever have you.
Yep, here we go.
And they talking about, man, I need this money fast, or things is going to blow up, or this and that, and like
self-destruction. For self-destruction.
I see it so much, and it just takes it back to basic principles.
Oh, that's all over Atlanta. That's almost commonplace here.
Oh my God! Like, and then like the people who's we're not gonna talk about credit scores. The people who I see that are extremely active on social media, and then I hear about the credit profiles or what they need help with, and then I just like scratch my head and I'm like, wow, like according to your social media, things are really great,
but it's really not.
Right, but that's where for me, to be honest with you, like I don't put too much stock, in that I'm the person like, let's talk and let's see some paperwork.
Exactly.
So
Just get it done. And as we were talking off air, we were talking about flying under the radar and making a huge impact. So I want to speak on that and I want to expound on that because there are a lot of people such as yourself that do fly under the radar, but when the results hit, you're not seen. You're behind the scenes, and let's be honest, it's better to be that way behind the scenes when you're making things happen on an exponential level. But expound on that fly under the radar, make greatest impact ordeal.
well, I would say for me, it's like because like I really love the work. Like even back in my mortgage company days, like I never forget a gentleman by the name of Gary Copeland. He was a school security guard, and he actually had a disability. He was a disabled person, school security guard. He was living in a messed up apartment, slumlord, and this housing nonprofit organization that I used to work with, they referred him to me. And short story short, his daughter actually worked at another mortgage company, and she couldn't get him a mortgage.
Wow.
I wind up getting him a mortgage. Got him out of that slumlord situation. Got a house he can call his own. Like grown man cried at the closing table, whatever have you. And like so that was impactful for me. You know what I mean? That meant something for me. So now as I transition in the commercial finance world, like when I look at it, like I'm supporting businesses and businesses support people. Like this is a big deal. When somebody, says, "Hey Marcus, I heard about you or I want to work with you." And cuz literally 99% of my business is referral based. Like I'm, and granted because I'm in the process of scaling, I'm getting ready to get to start doing the paid ads and all that fun stuff.
Yeah.
But up until now, I have really built my business really organically in regard to somebody just having a good experience and telling somebody else, and to the point to where, and I think this says a lot, especially if you know the finance game, like the people who I do business with, they refer me business. Meaning like the banks that I do business with, they'll have a client that maybe either they can't do anything for, or they may have reached their limit, or they know, hey, you know what, we did this for you, but I know a guy who can supplement what you're looking for or whatever have you. I get those type of introductions all the time.